Welcome back, everybody. We are cutting out of that feed because we have an update right now in the Paul Manafort case out of Virginia. As I told you, we have our very own editor of Law and Crime, Colin Kalmbacher, here to report about it. He's outside the courthouse right now. Hi, Colin. Okay, so I want to ask you some questions. First of all, the trial has been changing a whole different dynamic. We've seen all these accountants coming forward and are providing really crucial details. Is there any which way that you see so far that Paul Manafort can master a defense and say, I really didn't know what was going on, when all the evidence seems to suggest otherwise?
Yeah, so I think we may have gotten a preview of that, and I'm sorry about the image quality here. On Friday, late Friday, whenever Kevin Downing for the defense was doing his very brief cross-examination, kind of struck a lot of the journalists in the gallery by surprise at how brief and I would say light touch it was. But as I was saying, there may have been a preview of where the defense is metamorphosing into, because he told Judge Ellis that only, and here I'm going to do a direct quote for at least 3 words, only a fool, and end quote, would basically leave the amount of evidence of a crime that his client, Paul Manafort, left in ledgers for the bookkeeper, in documents for the accountant, distinction between the two, bookkeeper and accountant, though they're both basically accountants. And so essentially, I think what we may be seeing is what is sometimes satirically referenced as the idiot defense, which is basically my client didn't have the intelligence to do this, and this sounds kind of like a joke, but that could go to criminal intent. This is the mens rea, the state of mind, the idea that the person knew and was trying to commit a crime when they were doing these things, which by all accounts look very much criminal.
Yeah, it's kind of tough for him to do that when you see him approving and things on emails and basically claiming he didn't have foreign companies giving him money, which he actually owned and controlled. But here's the other question. He is taking the defense that let's blame Rick Gates, his partner. Do you think Rick Gates is going to testify this week?
That's what all indications are. There was, again, that kerfuffle last week where the prosecution was a little wishy-washy about it. That was immediately walked back. They said they have every intent to call Rick Gates. If they don't for some reason, then everybody would be shocked and surprised at this point. But that's kind of what we're all expecting today. The prosecution is expected to finish their case in chief. There's going to be what I would imagine a fairly brief cross of accountant Cynthia Laporta.
Colin, I hate to interrupt. I want you to stand by. We have to take a quick commercial break, but we're going to come back and talk to you about other updates in the case. So stand by, okay? All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back here on Law and Crime.
Welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Carissa Kranz. Before the break, Jesse Weber, your wonderful host, was talking to Law and Crime's Colin Kalmbacher at the Manafort trial. I want to bring Colin back on so we can continue to have an update. Remember, this is Trump's former campaign chief, Paul Manafort, on trial. Colin, I want to give you the opportunity to finish your thoughts from before with Jesse, and also tell us about the vibe in the courtroom.
Yeah, Carissa, just one small thing. Colin, not Colin, like Colin Powell,
oh, Colin.
The Iraq War guy.
Sorry about that.
So the vibe in the courtroom has, the past few days, of course not over the weekend, but last week, it was very dry the last couple of days. I would say most of the journalists' eyes glazing over because we had serial testimony from accountants and bookkeepers, one of which was the immunized witness, Cynthia Laporta. But once people started putting things together, or at least once the collective, I guess, understanding of what was going on, it looked like the prosecution was basically going line by line to prove or to attempt to prove that Paul Manafort had control over these foreign entities. They were paying him basically off the books. He wasn't claiming these payments as income. It was occasionally backshifted to become a loan to decrease his tax liability. There were tons of forged documents of all sort. I would say, despite any type of procedural hiccups, thus far, the prosecution has been making a fairly solid case, perhaps a little bit confusing at times, but it's hard to see what, if anything, Manafort's defense is going to be able to do with this. On cross-examination, they haven't done much at all.
Okay, Colin, and another question. I know the prosecution released a list of about 35 potential witnesses. How many witnesses have you heard from so far, and is that list still viable, 35 witnesses?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm not thinking that the 35 number is probably going to be what we're in store for. The prosecution there were indications that they might have finished their case in chief late last week. Judge Ellis has been speeding things along, true to the name of, or the nickname of this court. But I would say thus far, we've probably heard from just shy of 10 witnesses. And as everyone is expecting, we may have Rick Gates on tap today after the defense finishes with Cynthia Laporta.
And since there was no plea in this case by Manafort, do you feel like this was more political smoke and mirrors, or does the prosecution have a strong case? I mean, you're there in the courtroom listening to this live, and we're relying on you to let us know more secondhand.
Gotcha. So I think I can explain this by way of an anecdote. There were two, I guess, onlookers, non-journalists, non-reporters, non-lawyerly seeming folks, just regular people from Virginia in the courtroom on Friday. One of which was one of the people here was engaged in an argument with the other one. And basically one of the guys said, this is, yeah, maybe corruption, but it's not worth our taxpayer dollars. It has nothing to do with the Robert Mueller investigation. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sure everyone's heard some variation of this argument before. That said, this is basically a story of American wealth and the measures by which some of the extremely wealthy go to maintain and keep their wealth. So it may have started with Robert Mueller's wide dragnet and may not have a completely direct line toward the Russiagate investigation. But so far from what I've seen, this looks like white-collar crimes of some of the highest order. It may be quite more common and frequent than anyone in America would like to admit. Mueller has already ensnared a couple of Democrats. I believe that's Greg Craig and Tony Podesta. There may be more of those in the works. And right now, political smoke and mirrors, it's basically a non-issue. The prosecution has done a pretty decent job of showing what's been going on here. And all of it looks, or at least most of it looks fairly untoward.
And do you think that it shows from what you've heard so far in the prosecution's case in chief that there was intent and that he knew what was going on? Or do you think it seems that the defense has a pretty viable argument that he really didn't know what was going on and he was relying on other delegated experts and hired guns, and this isn't his fault?
Well, so far we haven't really seen much from the defense. They've kind of used the kid gloves on most of the prosecution's witnesses. There were lots of expectations that maybe these accountants, these bookkeepers, the defense would try to make them look either more incompetent, more stupid, perhaps more complicit than they were. That so far has just not happened. Kind of shocking a lot of observers, excuse me, wait for this bus to pass, kind of shocking a lot of observers in the courtroom. Here comes another one. And yeah, like I said, so far the defense has had a bit of a light touch with the prosecution's witnesses. So until they start their case in chief, there's not really much to turn to, except for maybe the fact that they'll say, my client was an idiot.
All right. Thanks, Colin. We so appreciate you joining us live and giving us that update
Absolutely.
from Virginia. You know, we really rely on that testimony, and this is an important trial that we are following closely. And those that want to follow it can go to Law&Crime.com, and we'll continue to have you on standby for any more updates. And we will come into you as breaking news as soon as you let us know there's more to know.